God wants to do a miracle in your brain and throughout your body. He remembered you today. He remembered you today.
Years and years that you have spent giving and sowing and blessing millions of lives. Is this the end? Is this the end of your voice? That's the question. It's not the cancer or the sickness. Lord, I'm praying for an escape from death. This is a vital and precious voice.
Now I'm gonna leave. Bye.
It was Labor Day, Monday, September 7th, 2015. It was like any other public holiday. Kim would make me breakfast in bed. So I got eggs and bacon and fried banana. And I laid back there like a queen, ate my breakfast, and he informed me that he was going to be cleaning out everything. There's too many of this in the house. Why do we need 4 or 5 forks and all of this kind of thing? So anyway, he cleaned out his cupboards and then he told me to come and take a look. So I had to get up, go have a look, tell him he did a very good job, because this doesn't happen very often. You know, Kim will go into the kitchen normally and he'll open the cupboard door, take out what he wants, and he doesn't close them. So I would be always, for 38 years, going behind him closing cupboard doors, because that's just, I mean, he doesn't see a mess like that. So this was unusual for him to do. I was laying on the bed reading a book or something, and it was about 20 minutes later, he came charging up. The door swung open and he came hobbling in, and he could not feel his right leg. He said, I don't have any feeling in my right leg. And I said, well, how does your heart feel? I mean, are you sweating? Do you have pain down your arm? No, doesn't have pain down his arm. And I thought, oh my God, he's having a stroke. I screamed to Jacqueline, get the car, get the car. She rushed down to the garage, pulled the car up, and he managed to walk to the car. He got in. By this stage, my heart was beating. I was just in a bit of a frantic state, realizing this is something very big. Something very big is going on. So we got in the car, and I could hardly drive. I was shaking so much. He said, now just calm down. He said, we don't want to get killed before we actually get to the emergency room. So I started calling everybody, calling Rena and Miranda to inform the emergency room that we were on our way and he was having a stroke. We arrived safely and he climbed out of the car, and I rushed in, signed the paper, and he had already walked back into the emergency area. And by the time I got back there, they had him in a gown, and he was laying in the bed, and he kept poking himself. I can't feel it. Very worried about it. And so they thought that maybe it was a pinched nerve in his lower back, because he'd had, of course, back surgery before. And so they went out and they started dealing with other patients, and he kept poking his side and saying, no, something is wrong, it's going up my side, it's going up my side. Call them, tell them it's going up my side. So I went rushing out and I said to them, it's not a pinched nerve because it's going up his side. It's not a pinched nerve. Somebody come quickly. And they took his blood pressure, it was sky high, and they thought that it was hypertension that had caused this problem. When they took him for the MRI, they saw a bleed. And by the time they pushed him back in, he said to me, oh no, he said, I can't feel my arm. And the horror in his eyes was just unforgettable to me. And I kept shouting at him, you will be okay, you will be okay. And don't worry about it, just relax, you're gonna be fine. And it must have been shortly after that he blacked out, because they put a book in front of him and they tried to get him to tell them what the story was about, and he couldn't tell them. He couldn't speak. He was going all over the place. He was trying to speak, and he was trying to get the words out like this, and it was just awful. The neurosurgeon who came over a big screen, and he was looking at Kim and found out all the symptoms and everything, and said, you can't deal with him there. You're going to have to put him in an ambulance and get him to us. Donna and I were just panicked at that point, because when they wheeled him out of the emergency, that was when Donna arrived, and she, not knowing the seriousness of it until she saw my face, and then realized this is not good. I could hardly drive the car, but I followed her and the ambulance, and the lights were flashing. And when an ambulance light's flashing, that means something bad's going on. Looking back, I know why they did that, because they expected him to die in that ambulance. By the time we got to Oxnard, they pulled him out of the ambulance and took him upstairs. He didn't know what was going on, and neither did we. When you're in a state like that, trying to figure out how to help your spouse who's in a critical condition, and you don't really understand what's going on, it's just an awful, awful place to be. And we went with him up to the ICU area of the hospital and spoke to a couple of doctors there, and we were told to wait. So, like I said, looking back, I think they were waiting to see what was going to happen. What was going to happen to him. And so then they decided it was best if they sent him to Cottage Hospital, to the surgeon there, who is very well known for dealing with strokes. By the time we got there, it was 10 o'clock at night. So this all happened 4 o'clock in the afternoon when he came bursting through the door. Till 10 o'clock that night, he still had not had any treatment, except for they gave him an IV and blood pressure medicine to keep his blood pressure under control. And that was the only two things that they did. They waited till the next day before they did an angiogram. And once he came out of the surgery for an angiogram, he, from then on till 3 or 4 weeks later, he was intubated and didn't know what was going on. So Donna and I and our family and the whole team and everybody, we were just holding our breath for a whole month. We didn't know what was going to happen, how he was going to turn out, what was going on really. We were looking at videos, trying to figure things out, trying to understand the whole brain, what was wrong with his brain and what needed to be done. They had him intubated with tubes coming out of everywhere, and it was quite a sight to see. Mark and Kathy Hayes, who we've known for many, many years, they came and prayed over Kim. My uncle from South Africa, Pastor Fred Roberts, he sent a handkerchief. We laid the scarves on him from his prayer garden. People were praying all over the world for him, which I'm so grateful for, because I really believe that had he not had that initially when I first alerted everyone to pray, I think he might not have made it. We did everything we knew to do, and he was surviving. He was making it. We asked doctors, well, what do we expect? What's supposed to happen next? I mean, how long is he going to be like this? And they said it could be a couple days, it could be a couple weeks. We don't know. So, of course, we started, really researching, trying to find out how we were going to get through this. We were in a nightmare, and we couldn't believe it. We just were shocked, absolutely stunned that he was walking around the day before, and now look at him. It was just too much to handle at the time. They had to paralyze him and sedate him at the same time. We stayed at that hospital 24/7, someone was with him, either me or one of my kids, while I went to the hotel and slept for a few hours. So it was a very, very hectic time for us, and very, emotionally draining. Once they started to wake him up, he opened his eyes for the first time, and he was just looking around, and he didn't know what was going on. I was hoping that he'd remember I was his wife. But there were some very, very funny moments with him when he was coming out. When the doctor came in, he was asking him to show 2 fingers, open your mouth, stick out your tongue. Kim would do none of those things. He wouldn't do any of them. He just said to the doctor, "Where did you get those glasses from? Don't you have enough money to buy better ones than that?" I was so embarrassed, I didn't know where to look. I just said, he doesn't mean that. He really doesn't mean that. I knew that he could do all of those things, but he just wouldn't do it for them.
See what they're laughing at me, you understand?
Yeah. They were taking him out of ICU down to the regular floor. He was being promoted. That means you're getting better. They wheel him out. Here he comes out into the bright sunlight, into the whole surrounding had changed, taken downstairs, and then picked up and put on the next bed. And the nurse comes in and she says, "What's your name?" And he turned to her and he said, Clement. And I was so shocked because he had not said his name. We had been asking him, "Who are you? What's your name?" And there he was, he said his name. Of course, I burst into tears. Donnie burst into tears. We knew we had him back because he knew who he was. It was a good time. He just went uphill from there. The doctors came in, say goodbye to him and check him over. And I said, "Are you sure it's a hypertensive bleed?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "Doesn't he need an MRI?" And he said, No, we're pretty sure it's a hypertensive bleed." He was one of the smartest doctors, and he was wrong. He was wrong. Kim actually needed an MRI, and maybe they would have seen that it was not a hypertensive bleed. So I need a break. So from Cottage Hospital, they were taking him to a really good rehab where there was neurosurgeons that were taking over his care. So we checked into the rehab, and those rehabs, it's hard work for them because here they have to teach them how to dress themselves, how to clean themselves, even just picking up a cup and putting it to your mouth. And so he goes through all of this with the occupational therapist. As swelling starts to go down, function starts to come back in the body. And it was a very exciting time for us because he was getting a lot of function back. You're supposed to stay in the rehab for at least 4 weeks. Well, after 10 days, he was wanting to get out of there. And oh my Lord, did I have to fight to get him out of that rehab with those doctors. They didn't want to let him go. But he didn't want to stay, and so I had to put my left foot forward and feel the difference and get him out of there, which is what I did. And so we arranged the therapy at home, everything at home, and they said, okay, he can go home if he's going to do all these things at home. So we got the brain injury specialist team. They would come to the house and do the therapy with him, and he was doing so well. Before he had this bleed, we were about to go to China and get our 5th little adopted daughter, and here he has the stroke, and I was saying, he has the stroke, there's a little girl waiting, what am I going to do? I knew right away that no matter what happened, I was going to get her. I was going to go if I had to go alone. By that time, Kim was back. He was weak and physically inhibited a little, but he was back. And he kept talking about the 26th. And I would say, what's going to happen on the 26th? He said, I know, I understand now, I understand. So I said, understand what? Can't you just share a little bit of what you understand with me. And he just never got to it. To begin with, he was mad with God because why did this happen to him? And then he had an encounter and he was weeping and he said he had an encounter and it was so beautiful. I understand what's going on. And then that was when he said the 26. You know, I didn't realize that the 26 was Thanksgiving. I didn't realize that. So I said, you have to tell me, okay? Just when it's the right moment, please tell me what that means. So we were preparing to go to China. He was very excited. He was going to get to go to China. And here comes Thanksgiving Day. That morning, woke up, I gave him breakfast. We were just relaxing, watching TV, and he said, oh, I've got a headache. I said, where? And he grabbed his head on the side. I've got a headache. I said, okay, I'll give you some Tylenol. Do you want some Tylenol? And he just kept saying, oh, my head. And then I said, well, just sit up for a minute. Let me rub your neck. So he sat up on the side of the bed and I was behind him rubbing his neck. He said, I can't feel my hand. And I jumped off the bed. I was trying to get him to speak to me and he couldn't speak. I started screaming, call 911. I laid my hands on him, prayed for him, picked him up, put him in the wheelchair, wheeled him to the front door. Tried to get him to speak to me. He couldn't. I just could not believe it. Could not believe it. Called everybody while I was standing there waiting for the ambulance to arrive. They put him in the ambulance. We followed the ambulance to the hospital. By the time we got there, he was throwing up. Another huge bleed. How could this happen? How could this happen so quickly? His blood pressure was not high. I took his blood pressure this morning. It was not high. So I knew that it wasn't a hypertensive bleed. I said, I promise you his blood pressure wasn't high. I know that it's not due to high blood pressure. Something else is going on, and you need to find out what it is. And so they put him in the ICU and they started to run blood tests and everything, and they came back and said that he had valley fever. They did another angiogram and they saw these little aneurysms in the arteries inside the brain. They said what causes that is some kind of an infection in the blood. So they were on that track, searching that. Here we were about to leave to go and get Caitlin, and I couldn't go. So we canceled the trip. I said, I'm not leaving her there. I'm going to come and get her. I just want Kim to be stable, and then I'm going to come and get her. I waited for him to be sent to the rehab after that brain bleed. And once he was in the rehab, I took a very quick trip to China and I went and got her. It was December 24th when I brought him home from the rehab. It took him a couple of weeks to kind of get back. Towards the end of January, the whole household got this flu bug and it went through the house. I got it, and that was the day he was supposed to have another angiogram. I couldn't take him, so he said he's not going if I'm not going. So we put it off for 1 week. But before we could, he started throwing up. And I could see something was not right. And I think from heaving, he might have had some pressure there that caused a small bleed. So he was put back into the ICU with bleed number 3, okay? So then they put him on salt and they got his brain pressure to come down. They moved him up to the floor. We were about to go home. And that night, he started throwing up. They took him for an MRI and they said they don't see anything. Meanwhile, there's a tumor the size of an orange looking back at them and they can't see it. The radiologists don't detect anything. There's a tumor the size of an orange looking back at them. They never saw the tumor. And that was before the fourth bleed. By the time the fourth bleed came, which was February 1st, it was a huge bleed and they did not expect him to live. They told me I need to prepare to switch off the machines, that he wasn't going to make it. And I was just absolutely distraught. I called my brother, I said, they want me to switch him off. And he said, don't you let them do that. Don't let them do that. You tell them to take the bleed out. So I said, I'm not switching him off. You realize that we can't tell you how he might not wake up. We might take this bleed out and he might not wake up. I said, well, I want you to try. He said, he's got no chance. He's not going to make it. Are you sure you want to go forward with this surgery? I said, yes, I want to. I want to go for it. And I got a bit irritated with him. I said, hurry up and go get it out. So he did. He went, got it out, came back, told us tissue didn't look right. He said, now we'll wait and see. And he went out and he came rushing back. In 20 minutes after that, he said, a miracle has happened, a miracle. He's doing all the right things. His reflexes are doing the right things. So we were so thankful that, he was waking up. At least he was waking up. We didn't know anything further than that, but we knew he was alive and he was okay. February 1st, he has this fourth bleed. They found that it's a tumor. I was terrified that it was going to be glioblastoma, which is just not recoverable. It turned out that it's a sarcoma, undifferentiated sarcoma, which is very, very rare to actually happen in the brain. There's less than 50 people in the world. And so they are baffled. They are trying to figure out where the primary tumor came from. And so they're still battling with that to this day. We were researching sarcomas and I was reading about how different they are and how you need a sarcoma specialist, and not all oncologists are sarcoma specialists because it's a very rare cancer. And of course the doctor that found the mass in the brain said that he's very willing to remove the tumor. I, because of all my reading, was not happy that he was the best surgeon to remove the tumor. And then when he told me he's going to have to order equipment into the operating room and it's going to take him till next week to get all that equipment, a red flag just went up. I knew that it wasn't the right thing. Sunil actually said to me when he came to the hospital, if somebody is not positive, don't use them. Use someone who gives you peace and you know that they're very positive. And so I remembered what he had said and I didn't feel positive. We reached out to our local MD who put us in contact with someone at UCLA, and she's a very fine surgeon at UCLA. And she actually called when she heard about Kim and spoke to me over the phone, and she said, we will send an ambulance to come and get him. Well, they were going to transfer him the next day, and I arrived in the morning at the ICU ward, and Kim had a fever. And his whole body was shaking. They said he's contracted something, he's got a fever. They started him on antibiotics, put him in the ambulance, sent him to UCLA. By the time he arrived, his jaw was shaking, his whole body was shaking. He had contracted meningitis. And so they could not remove the tumor because they had to get rid of the meningitis first, which they weren't sure he was going to survive from either. For 2 weeks we were in ICU with him on antibiotics. February the 23rd was the day that they went in and removed the tumor the size of an orange. She did a good job of taking that tumor out. They did very targeted radiation for 6 weeks after he was released from the hospital. And to this day, the tumor has not returned to his brain. Of course, they're trying to figure out where the primary source of the tumor was. Was it in the brain, or did it come from some other part of his body? And so to determine that, they have to do what's called a PET scan. So I kept waiting for them to take him for this PET scan, and it never happened. And I was concerned about that. I had to do an escape from the hospital with Kim, which Greg Scroggins and I did. Kim had been scratching his head, and the stitch had kind of come loose in the side, but it had already healed. And they said, no, we're going to have to redo the stitches. And I thought, how can they put this poor guy through this? So once they went out, I said, Greg, go find me a wheelchair. So he went around the thing, he found a wheelchair. Quick, I've done all the physical therapy. I know how to pick him up, put him in the wheelchair, do all the thing. So we whipped him up, put him in the wheelchair, grabbed all his stuff, and out we went. We just marched right by them. All the doctors are standing in their white coats. We just walked by like we were supposed to. We got in the elevator, incognito. Kim had his hat on, and we tried to look normal because there's doctors and people coming in, and I whipped the tags off of us, so we just looked like regular visitors. We got down to the floor, handed them the car thing. Greg got him into the car, and we were gone. The next thing, I get a phone call. I didn't answer. So then they called Rena. Where are the Clements? She said they're on their way home. They said, no, they need to turn around and come back. She said, no, he's fine. We promise you he's fine. And so that was our hasty retreat from UCLA. So we arrived home on March 11th, 3/11. Kim always talked about that number, 3/11. You know, he was happy to be home. Could tell about that. From there, he just really started recovering well. I kept wanting this PET scan. I wanted this PET scan. The insurance wouldn't pay for it, so I said, I don't care. I want to pay for the PET scan out of pocket, but I want him to have the PET scan. And so he had the PET scan, and it came back showing some tumor growth on his lungs. We are now dealing with some tumors in his lungs, but he's breathing. His oxygen saturation is 99. You wouldn't tell that he had anything in his lungs at the moment. You wouldn't tell. But we caught it very early, and so that is what we're dealing with at the moment. He's on some chemotherapy now. The best way to get rid of sarcoma is to surgically remove it, which we have actually proved because it hasn't returned to the brain. And so I feel like these tumors need to be surgically removed, and I'm aiming to have that done. Took him to Memorial Sloan Kettering, where the best sarcoma specialist is in the nation. So we're under his supervision at the moment. And so Kim's in the best hands for sarcoma. I'm just letting the Lord guide me. He's guided me all the way through, and Kim has survived. This has been one unbelievable attack. It's just unbelievable. The devil doesn't want him on this earth, that's for sure. 4 brain bleeds. Those are like 4 major strokes. He's come through meningitis, having a tumor, a very rare brain tumor. It's just a miracle that he's survived this long, and I attribute that to the prayers of everybody out there. We are just so thankful to everybody who stood with us over this past year. When this first happened, it was a shock to all of us, and we weren't sure how we were going to maintain what Kim was doing. But actually what Kim was doing was everything that we all can do. We still carrying on with our programs, our giving to Israel and the bomb shelters, and our funding children's surgeries, our boots on the ground in different areas. We've started a pantry that we're going to be helping people with food in our local setting. Kim's planted a good foundation, and we're just so grateful for everyone that's part of it. Thank you so much.
Pray, Lord, that each warrior would receive a glimpse of this future.
I really believe that he's going to come through for us.
Lord, if you could do it for somebody else, you can do it for us.
I will build this building to honor you, oh God. Lungs are being healed right now of disease.
Miracles do happen.
If you want that, say yes! I'm feeling like I'm standing in 2017. I look forward to seeing you there.